Hello again, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for this Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather. First full day of spring on 21st of March 2021. I'm Dave Percy, meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, we've got hazardous weather graphic. We've got winter storm watches out for Tuesday for St. Lawrence Island, the Bering Strait coast, also southern coast of the Seward Peninsula, Norton Sound, Stebbins, Nome, White Mountain, Golovin, and then down to the Yukon Delta as well, mostly along the coast there to start, but may push inland late Tuesday into across the Yukon Delta. Also up on the Shishmaref area, north side of the Seward Peninsula, Kotzebue Sound, maybe Selawik, all of the northwest coast on up to Point Hope. And that's for big storm pushing in across the northern Bering Sea during the late night hours Monday night, and then Tuesday bearing down up in that area. And satellite imagery, not showing really any storminess out there in the Bering Sea. There's higher top clouds there with an upper level trough actually over the north. You can see along the northwest coast extending down in toward the Kuskokwim Valley, and also some areas of light snow and snow showers covering the southwest part of the state, but amounts quite light, generally less than a half an inch, if that, across much of the area. Some areas didn't see anything at all. Otherwise, it looks dry for Bristol or across the Alaska Peninsula. Not too bad, Kodiak Island, and still rain and snow showers going on over the Panhandle today. Not too heavy on the amounts. Sit at about 1/3 of an inch in the last 12 hours, while Wrangell had about 3/10 of an inch of rainfall during the last 12 hours. Falling the snow earlier today, rain in the afternoon here, kind of a mix there across the southeast coast this afternoon. That's going to slowly diminish, but it'll take its time ending as fair and cold conditions continue over the interior today, right up to the North Slope. Umiat Airfield this morning down to, I believe, 36 degrees below zero, and there are even minus 30s reported in the eastern interior down into the Copper River Basin. Chisana had a morning low of right around 32 below zero. Not bad for after March 15th. And also below zero, I believe it was 15 below in Willow this morning. Anyway, moving this along again, you can see some clouds associated with a storm south of the eastern Aleutians that'll begin infecting that area, tightening the gradient up, and they'll keep the cold air locked in place or coming down as north-northeast winds increase there. There'll be quite a few snow showers going on the Bering Sea side of the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula. That wasn't so much the case today. That area farther back to the west there, kind of affecting the western central Aleutians. They had a high pressure building over the western Bering Sea. Weak low there on the southern coast of the Norton Sound area, producing some light snow showers. I mentioned really nothing heavy, just all light and scattered, really scattered. You get down into Bristol Bay there, and dry and mostly clear over the eastern interior and northern half of the state out to the Arctic coast. Just a few clouds in areas, light winds, and rain and snow showers over the southeast coast. And for tonight, look for that storm front moves northward, and that puts a squeeze on the atmosphere there, and the winds pick up considerably there for the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula at a lesser extent. But with cold air in place, look for mostly snow to fall over the Fox Islands and some light snow even for the Alaska Peninsula. Upper level low and the reflection at the surface there over the western interior, look for light snow and snow showers there. And clear and cold, well below zero again, eastern half of the state from the Copper River Basin to Sitna Valley northward to the Arctic coast, and rain and snow showers for the Panhandle. And then for Monday, that slow-moving trough edges eastward slowly there as high pressure builds into the central Bering Sea and ridges up in toward the Bering Strait. Ahead of that big storm farther out to the west, and some rain and snow for Kodiak Island with that low center grazing the area there. And then we'll see on Tuesday that low takes a track to the northeast and brings another round of rain and snow, and not too bad on the winds though. Probably small craft advisory winds with that front. The strongest gradient will be down toward the Queen Charlottes there, along with the heaviest precipitation. And finally, that upper level trough slowly swings eastward, so we'll probably get some snow showers coming across south central Alaska during the overnight hours on Monday, lingering into early Tuesday. And then winter storm watch out, as I mentioned, Yukon Delta coast, St. Lawrence Island, winds gusting 65 miles per hour with maybe 1 to 3 inches of snow. And of course, that'll blow around with those winds and reduce visibilities to less than a quarter mile. And that front trails off to the western Aleutians. Lows for tonight, 20s and 30s for the Panhandle. and anywhere from 5 below to 10 above south central Alaska, a little milder out toward the coast. And the winds will diminish for Seward and allow temperature drop into the teens, and 15 to 20 below for the Copper River Basin, teens for Bristol Bay, and again 15 to 30 below for the eastern northern interior, and below zero St. Lawrence Island, 5 below say, and single numbers all the way out to the Yukon Delta coast, Nunivak Island, lower 20s Pribilofs. Highs for tomorrow, mid-teens for the Copper River Basin, mostly 20s south central Alaska, upper 30s Kodiak Island, 40s for the Panhandle, upper 20s Bristol Bay, 15 to 20 for the Tanana Valley, and single numbers from the Brooks Range to right around 0 for the Arctic coast. And staying below 10 for the northern Bering Sea, actually 9 degrees there at Makoriak, 25 for the Pribilofs, and 30s for the central Aleutians, and 20s, upper 20s, lower 30s for the Alaska Peninsula. And then the lows right around freezing for Kodiak Island on Tuesday morning. And warmer though, south central Alaska, Susitna Valley, teens, mid-teens, or 10 to 15. And still below 0 for the Copper River Basin and the McGrath area, 20s and upper 30s for the Panhandle, and below 0 but near 0 in the Tanana Valley, and a little below 0, a little warmer there for the area up to the Brooks Range and even the Arctic coast, but still below 0 for St. Lawrence Island and the southwest coast. And that's followed by highs lower or 30 35 south central Alaska, mid 40s southern Panhandle, upper 30s Kodiak Island, mid to upper teens for the Tanana Valley, and right around 0 for the Arctic coast, and mid 30s for the Pribilofs, near 40 for the Aleutians.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Traffic for Monday morning. A little bit of IFR there over the North Slope, and then along the Porcupine River there down to the old Fort Yukon Chukchitsic area. Then VFR elsewhere, central eastern interior, Gulf of Alaska, or in Prince William Sound and Kenai Peninsula. Marginal VFR slipping on into western Cook Inlet, Kamishak Bay, and southwest West Kodiak Island, with IFR right along the Alaska Range down into northeast Bristol Bay, and the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula, and then all of the Alaska Peninsula from about Nelson Lagoon on down to Falls Pass, and on Alaska Island, marginal VFR Unmak Island westward to Kiska Island, Pribilofs marginal, northern Bering Sea, Yukon Delta coast, as well as Bering Strait, all VFR. Panhandle, some IFR in the east and marginal elsewhere. And for the afternoon, mostly marginal VFR for the southeast coast tomorrow. Marginal VFR for the eastern North Gulf Coast. Prince William Sound, no VFR. And most of the Kenai Peninsula VFR, except Kachemak Bay, Kamishak Bay marginal, and Bristol Bay marginal, southeast Bering marginal VFR. VFR, though, for the central Aleutians. Interior, eastern and central interior looking pretty good. Cook Inlet right on up to the western Arctic coast, eastward, all VFR, and some marginal VFR from along the northwest coast, Noatak Valley area. Down across Kotzebue Sound, Selawik, and lower Yukon River Valley, all of Kuskokwim Valley to Kuskokwim Bay, marginal. And then for Tuesday morning, we've got VFR, eastern Aleutians, and for Atka, marginal VFR right on the edge of ADAC there, and then with the next front IFR into the western Aleutians, southwest Bering. Just a narrow band of marginal VFR along the Alaska Range on up into the mid-Yukon Valley there, river area, and then eastward over toward Eagle, fairways north and south, but north of the Alaska Range. And also a marginal VFR from the eastern North Gulf Coast, northern Panhandle. IFR for that looks like about the southern half of the Panhandle. And otherwise Kodiak Island, marginal VFR. And then for the afternoon becomes VFR there for Kodiak Island, and then a swath of marginal VFR through the central interior that extends down into the Kuskokwim Valley, and but not past the Alaska Range, although Kenai Peninsula looking for some marginal VFR on up into Kanik and Turnagain Arms, and probably the Matanuska Valley, as well as much of the Copper River Basin, marginal VFR right on up across the Alaska Range. Upper Tanana Valley, 40-mile country, marginal VFR northward to the Yukon River, and extends westward there to the Seward Peninsula, Noatak Valley. IFR with that front next system from the Bering Strait, St. Lawrence Island, right on down to Amchitka, westward to Shimianatu. Solid IFR for the Panhandle for the afternoon on Tuesday, extending into the eastern Gulf of Alaska. And for the passes tomorrow, looking good. Anatuvik and Adigan for the Brooks Range, both VFR. And for the western Alaska Range, looks kind of marginal there for Lake Clark and Merrill, and to a lesser extent rainy Could be some VFR for a significant time tomorrow, possibly, but call it marginal now. And for windy, though, VFR definitely, and it'll be VFR for Isabel and Mentasta, as well as Tanita, a good VFR. Even Portage, VFR from start to finish Monday. And Chilcoot and White, marginal VFR. Freezing levels, really nothing to look at much here except the surface. Now down to the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, actually south of the central and western Aleutians there, that cold air pushing down currently into tomorrow morning. And just off the North Gulf Coast and cutting across the Panhandle, 2,000 feet near the Queen Charlottes. And onto icing. See that system south of Kodiak, the heaviest icing staying south of the area there. And some possible mixed icing of mostly the light variety there for the Panhandle. Same sort of pattern, mixed icing, Kuskokwim Valley up across Yukon River into the northwest interior. And then the next system, big storm out there in the west for tomorrow, doesn't really reach the western Aleutians. That'll be tomorrow night and the next day. And then for the jet stream, big ridge out there over the western Bering, but northerly winds, 135 knots, St. Lawrence Island, drop down to about 75 to 100 over the as they approach the Aleutians, and then southwest flow 105 to 110 knots just east of Kodiak, cuts into the Panhandle about 120 knots, and then turns northwesterly as it exits the area there, and 9,000 feet, about the same, 3,000, 25 to 35 knots over the eastern Aleutian or eastern Bering Sea. Moderate chop, Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians, shimmy in at 2 for the turbine.
You guys got everything tied down back there? Yeah. Yep. We're going through the lee of St. Elias, so there might be some turbulence.
Fasten seatbelt sign on.
Well, who am I to tell you what to do?
There are tens of thousands of glaciers in Alaska. Some stunning cliffhangers, others wide glaciers that come down to meet the ocean tides. Some, like this one we flew over in August, are easily visible from low Earth orbit and are mesmerizing from 1,000 feet above, and have trees growing on top of their soil-laden boundaries. Those glaciers, although they represent only a fraction of the world's ice, are contributing much more than their share to sea level rise. Chris Larson and his colleagues have repeatedly measured 220 of them in a small single-engine otter, measuring their height with lasers and their depth with radar, and watching them change from season to season and year to year. But Alaskan glaciers are also different. We're only just figuring out how they all behave. Data from flights like these, part of NASA's Operation Icebridge, can help fill the gaps. Chris and radar specialist Martine Trufer are both from the University of Alaska Fairbanks and both seasoned Alaskan pilots. But they rely on their good friend and legendary bush pilot Paul Kloss and his 35,000 hours in the cockpit to fly the incredibly demanding flight lines the mission requires.
And does it help you guys being pilots too?
I would like to think so, but watching Paul fly and seeing what he does, it's kind of like trying to learn quantum mechanics in kindergarten.
You know, I can fly my airplane around, but just seeing what Paul does in this extremely challenging environment in the mountains while trying to follow a specific flight line at a specific altitude above ground, negotiating winds, topography, maybe occasional low-level clouds that you have to get around, and just managing all that is just several levels above what I could do as a pilot.
Well, I think the first time I came here to this park, I was probably 4 years old with my father. I've been blessed to be able to fly in lots of places in the world, all over the place actually, almost every continent. I guess I'm always looking for some place that might be better than this, but I haven't found it.
Paul's plane is about 60 years old and is the first single-engine otter ever retrofitted with a 1,000 horsepower engine, which makes takeoffs feel effortless and gives Paul the ability to negotiate wild terrain, which he certainly did during the first 2 incredible science flights of this campaign. And with sunny skies and relatively calm air, we covered 3 vastly different pieces of ice. While Paul fueled up the plane, Chris gave us a preview of the day's science and scenery.
So it has one of the greatest coastal reliefs anywhere in the world. So it's between the ocean and the summit of Mount St. Elias, which is 18,008 feet high. It's less than 10 miles. There's a stupendous amount of mountain right off the ocean. It's hard to beat it anywhere in the world. It might be the prettiest for me. It's absolutely stunning. From here in McCarthy, we'll cross one of the bigger precipitation gradients in Alaska too. Here it's about 10 inches of precipitation a year, and we'll go over to an area where it's on the order of 200 inches per year. So it's from one of the driest parts of Alaska to one of the wettest parts of Alaska in about 45 minutes flight time.
Whoa, that's pretty good.
That's awesome. You want to do Tyndall next?
Sure, where you want?
If the winds are calm now, might as well grab it.
First, we came to the rugged landscape of Icy Bay, which not that long ago wasn't a bay at all. It was filled with ice. Tidewater glaciers in this region can make dramatic advances and retreats as they feed on high rates of snowfall and then retreat as they're melted by warm ocean waters. Like the Tyndall Glacier seen here, most of these glaciers have retreated dramatically over the last 100 years. But nearby Yahtzee Glacier, after years of retreat, is currently the most rapidly advancing glacier in Alaska. Overall, though, the Icebridge Alaska surveys, from the Denali region in the north to the Juneau ice field in the southeast, have documented pretty substantial thinning of glacial ice. Areas seen here in orange and red show between about 10 and 15 feet of thinning per year.
There's a nice waterfall up there from the hanging ice.
When we very first started profiling this, Paul, this gravel fan in the one in the valley next to it didn't exist.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
this was
look at all the good landing spots here.
Yeah,
There's no place to land here before.
no, it was deep water.
After covering several of Icy Bay's glaciers, given that it was time for lunch, just like that, we landed in this unforgettable spot. Flying eastward, leaving Icy Bay behind, we came to the mighty Malaspina, one of the Earth's great examples of a Piedmont glacier that spills out like pancake batter onto a broad plain as it approaches the sea. It surges at uneven intervals, creating dramatic patterns on its surface as it distorts the moraines of rock and soil borne along by the glacier. The Malaspina is less dynamic than the Yahtzee and is only melting at about the average rate for Alaska, but that could change quickly.
It has the potential for being one of the bigger geographic evolutions in Alaska. Certainly my son will be able to witness some big geography changes there. There's potential for it being connected with the ocean through some narrow lagoons, estuaries, which would take a little bit of coastal erosion, but it's not too hard to imagine that where the Malaspina Glacier is now could become a large bay.
The data that Martine's radar provides could reveal how vulnerable the Malaspina is to melting by the nearby ocean. Here we see the radar returns from the surface of the glacier, and here is something that Chris's lasers can't see, the rocky bed of the glacier, giving us both clues as to what's happening under the ice, as well as a measurement of its thickness. Finally, we came to the Yakutat ice field, 300 square miles of absolutely doomed ice perched high in the mountains. Researchers even debate how this ice field came to be at all, since in its current configuration, it's hard to imagine how it could capture enough snow to form glacial ice. And so, even if the Arctic weren't warming faster than the rest of the planet, this area would be likely to melt within a century or two. But with many other glaciers, it's easier to see the connection between a warming planet and ice loss. Thanks to data from IceBridge and other surveys, we now have a good estimate of the current rate of loss from Alaskan glaciers, 75 gigatons a year. While airborne observations over Alaskan glaciers have provided a rich record of change in the area, those efforts are now augmented by NASA's newest ice measuring tool, ICESat-2. With 6 laser beams of its own, and orbiting the Earth every 90 minutes, the satellite will carry on the record of Alaskan change. For their part, Chris and his team will continue to do their surveys for at least the next 2 years, helping to validate the ICESat-2 data and make further detailed observations over the stunning glaciers of Alaska.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at today's sea ice analysis. About the same there in Bristol Bay on up near Nunivak Island, northern Bering Sea, actually retreating or getting a little thinner there around St. Matthew Island and just to the north there. And then thinner ice also again on the north side of St. Lawrence Island. And still a fair amount of ice there in Cook Inlet, especially north of the Forelands. And moving on to the coastal water forecasts, west winds 15 to 20 knots on the south coast of the Panhandle, lighter and more southwest on the north coast, only 15 knots, seas at about 10 feet. Central and southern inside waters looking at a light southeast wind, 10 knots, 2 to 5 foot seas. And for Lynn Canal, northwest 15 for Monday with seas at 3 feet. And for Tuesday, Lynn Canal north 15, 10 knots for Stevens Passage out of the north, and then small craft advisories for Clarence Strait with southerlies at 25 knots. Small craft advisories on the south coast of the Panhandle, west winds 25 knots, seas at about 12 feet, and southeast 25 knots with 10-foot seas on the north coast. Prince William Sound tomorrow, look at looking for northeast winds at 15 knots with 3-foot seas. Eastern North Gulf Coast, winds will be northeast at 15 with gusts 30 knots, seas 6 feet. And for the western North Gulf Coast, easterlies 20 knots. Same thing for the Barren Islands, east winds at 20. And for southern Cook Inlet, Kamishak Bay, winds will be out of the northeast at 20 knots with 5-foot seas and a light northeast breeze north of the Forelands. For Tuesday, northern Cook Inlet west at 10 knots. Otherwise, southern Cook Inlet northwest at 20, and small craft advisories for Kamishak Bay with northwest wind picking up to about 30 knots. While the Barren Islands, western North Gulf Coast will be out of the west at 30 knots, so seas at 10 feet. Northwest 20 for the Middleton Island area, and northwest 15 for Prince William Sound. Kodiak Island, east side, east 15, 5-foot seas, Shelikof Strait, on down to Castle Cape. Looking at a northeast breeze at 20 with seas 5 to 6 feet. Gale warnings from Castle Cape to Cape Sarachev for north winds at 35. Just under the gale threshold there on the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula. North winds 30 knots there, and northwest at 20 for Bristol Bay. Those will turn west and fall back to 15 knots for Bristol Bay on Monday or on Tuesday. Otherwise, small craft advisories for the Alaska Peninsula, west-northwest 25 to 30 knots, and small craft advisories for Kodiak Island as well for west-northwest winds 25 to 30 knots, seas 6 to 10 feet. Fox Islands, good gales tomorrow. Out of the north, 35 to 40 knots, seas 12 to 16 feet, and 30 to 35 knot northerly winds for Adak and Atka coming down in the afternoon, seas running 10 to 12 feet. And then gales coming into the Shimiatu area, pushing in toward Kiska. Out of the south, coming up to 40 knots. And for Tuesday, west-southwest 40 knots for the western Aleutian, seas 17 to 22 feet. Gale warnings Adak and Atka, southwest 35 knots. Small craft advisories for the Fox Islands, southerlies 25 to 30 knots, seas 9 to 14 feet. Southwest coast, northwest wind 20 to 30 knots with seas in the ice-free waters up to 5 feet. St. Lawrence Island, not too bad, northwest at 20. Northwest 20 also for St. Matthew Island. The Pribilof, small craft advisories, north 25 knots, seas at 8 feet. And then for Tuesday, Norton Sound just south at 15, but big increase in the winds for St. Lawrence Island. Southerlies sustained 40 knots with higher gusts. Gales developing along the Yukon Delta coast, south coming up to 35 knots in the afternoon. And also southwest winds increasing to 30 knots in the afternoon for the area south of Nunivak Island. Gale warnings for the Pribilof, south 35, southwest 45 for St. Matthew Island. Eastern Beaufort Sea coast, let's see, looking at east winds at 30 tomorrow. Kaktovik, Barter Island over to Demarcation Point, coming down to 15 out of the east for the central coast and even lighter on the west side. And then northwest 20 from Wales to Cape Thompson. And for Tuesday, from Wales to Cape Beaufort, south winds, brisk wind advisories for 25 knot winds, and southwest 15 on the western Arctic coast, central and eastern Beaufort Sea coast, looking at west winds at 15 knots. For tonight, upper level trough slowly moving eastward. The most significant snow will be from about the eastern Norton Sound area up to the Noatak Valley and along the northwest coast. And then it'll stay fair. Temperatures below zero again for the eastern and central interior of the state. And unsettled with rain and snow showers continuing for the Panhandle. Winds increase there and snow for the Eastern Aleutians Alaska Peninsula with that low just to the south, but it pulls eastward. But stays windy with snow showers mostly on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula. And band of snow and snow showers western interior, clear and cold on the east side, and unsettled for the Panhandle. Big storm pushes eastward in the northern Bering Sea on Tuesday.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.